Hello and welcome to Digging the Course 365. Today we're not digging, guys. We're not digging because there's something far more important for me to be doing. I don't know if you can see where I am, what I'm doing, but it's to do with tanks. You won't recognise this as a tank, but this is a tank designed by Da Vinci in the 1840s. Now, Da Vinci was most well known for, the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, but he wasn't just a painter, he was also a bit of an engineer and scientist. As I mentioned last week, we had Poppy Day, and this is possibly the best poppy tribute I've ever seen. Absolutely stunning, all made with poppies. I'm in my element. So this guy here is Little Willie, the first ever tank, pretty much. And the word tank, if you're interested, it was a land ship, and they called it a land ship because it was the Royal Navy who actually had the task of designing them to start with, but they were trying to keep it top secret, so they did away with the word land ship because they thought that'd give it away to the Germans, and came up with a different name, tank. So this is Little Willie, 101 years old. Fantastic. So from Little Willie, they then moved on to Mark II. Now, the front of this, if I can just take you there, looks pretty much the same as Little Willie. The difference with this one is the tracks go over the top rather than just at the bottom, and this one wasn't armoured, as you can tell by all the holes inside it. Well, this was from, I think, 1917. You can even see inside it, look. This is just so cool. There's even a group of, I don't know if they're cadets or not cadets, soldiers of some kind, being shown around here, obviously to teach them about them. There must be new recruits. This tiny little thing here is the Renault Ft-17, or a Mosquito tank, designed by the French. So the French thought, have thousands of small tanks and use them like a swarm of mosquitoes going for the enemy. The problem is, they didn't finish them till after World War I, so they never really got used. I bet it goes really fast in reverse though. So then from that one we moved on to this one, commonly known as the Whippet, but it's the medium Mark A. And it's called the Whippet simply because it is very, very fast. It went 8 miles an hour, which was twice as fast as the last one, the Mark II. And something about this one you might be interested in. If you look up here, some of these are painted on these little slots, and that's to fool the enemy to fire at them rather than the real one. Quite clever, really. I've only seen 3 tanks and I'm absolutely buzzing. I've got about 100 to go. So this armoured car, this is quite interesting. If there was a riot and anyone tried to attack it or turn it over or anything, it's actually electrified. So anyone who touched it would get an electric shock. That's the Lancaster Mark II, another armoured car. To be honest with you, I'm not that interested in armoured cars. I've come to see tanks. So I'm not going to even look at that and tell you anything about it. Let's move on. Now we're on to proper woman machines. This is called, wait for it, a Tankette. It's called a Tankette. What a load of rubbish. Look at that. You had one guy sitting there, one guy there, and it was just for machine gunners really. But apparently they didn't like change very much, so the guys didn't like to use them. They just used them for Renaissance. They just used them to look out at people rather than as a machine gun warrior type machine. Oh, you know where I'm coming from. It's powered by a Model T Ford engine. Yeah, that's rubbish. Move on, move on. They used this in Egypt at the end of World War II. And apparently because it was so slow, it wasn't very effective. So what they did is just bury it under the sand and just have the turret showing above and just used it as like a defensive gun rather than a moving tank. If you see all these doors in the side here, they're just for ventilation, and that's where they would go in and out. A Mark II, not bad, not bad, we're getting better. This is the Vickers Armstrong Mark II, no, Mark E tank. It was the second most popular tank in the world, and it was commonly known as the 6-tonner. Why? I have no idea, because it weighs more than 6 ton. That don't make much sense, does it? Now we're talking, we're on to German now. Panzer II. This was like the most feared tank at the beginning of World War II because there were 2,000 of them sent into France. This particular tank they actually seized in North Africa in 1942. You know, this tank museum means business. If they're sending people out to Africa during a war to seize a tank just for their museum. Fantastic. This is a light Mark VIB. Oh, there's a tank moving behind me there. What can I tell you about this one? This wasn't used for fighting, it was just for lookout. But what I do find interesting about this one, look, the driver's got a mirror to make sure his hair looks good. Something here, there's a plate on here, the manufacturer's plate, and as you can see, the maker's details have been taken off. And that's in case anybody ever seized the machine, they wouldn't know where the maker was in England, so that they could bomb the factory. This is a Char B1. Getting a bit bored of tanks now, to be honest with you. A Char B1 French, and the interesting thing about this one is the gun could only point. Basically, if you wanted to turn the gun, you couldn't turn the turret around, you had to turn the entire machine around, which seems a bit strange to me. This particular one, the Germans seized this off the French, obviously. They're not quick enough to get away. And they used this in the Channel Isles in Jersey, when they took over Jersey. And then we got it back, we took it back off them. No use to the French, is it? It's a tank. That's a Cruiser Mark III. Big deal. And here you have my favourite tank, the Russian T-34/85. I think this is the best tank from World War II, personally. Something you might not know though, in Russia it was quite common for women to drive them. And this is the shells which they'd fire. So after your T-34 from Russia, Hitler ordered the Germans to basically copy it, and they came up with the Panzer. And there it is. Now, yes, I'm not saying that is actually the best tank. This is a better tank, but it wasn't as effective in World War II because they didn't make enough of them. And this particular one was actually made in Germany by the British. The British overtook one of their factories and basically carried on making them for us to use. Now, I was going to do a little segment in this glass case behind me, because there's a lot of things in there, but then I noticed there's a book there. You know, if there's going to put a book in a case, I'm not looking at the other stuff. Boring, a books. Now you might recognise that tank if you know your tanks. That's an American Sherman inside there. But this is not just a Sherman. This is a Sherman Duplex drive. It's basically it can swim. It's a swimming tank. This was developed by the British, yet they used the American tanks. It's getting very noisy. There's a tank kicking off over there. Because this would float, because it's got this like material outside, which would then be sunk when it's on land. That would come down, and that would help it to float. And yeah, designed by the British. Pretty impressive. This is the Churchill Mark 7. This was the last ever one made. We know that because there's a plaque on it somewhere which tells you. I can't find it. Oh. No, yeah, you can't read it. But it's basically saying, yeah, the last tank of its kind made in 1945. And what's interesting about this one is instead of a machine gun, it would have a flamethrower on the front. And it was a very, very strong tank. It was much stronger at the front than the German Panzer tank, so very good but very slow. Obviously named after Churchill himself. Winston Churchill, that is. This one here is the Centurion. Probably the best British tank ever made, but never saw action in World War II. It was developed for World War II, but by the time they got them out there, the war was over. This one's the M48 Patton, named after General Patton. And this one was used more in Vietnam War, I think, rather than World War II. Let me just check that. Probably most famous for its use in the yeah, I already knew that. I knew that myself, yeah. This is the T-72 tank, a Russian tank. And can you see the big pipe sticking up here? That was used as a snorkel so that the driver could go through rivers and things. This is quite a modern tank and has the longest barrel on any tank in the world. I believe, I might be wrong, but that's what it says on a piece of paper over there. That's a Ferret Scout car. You know, when you leave school and you go into the army and you decide to be a tank driver or something, you're not going to want, you'd be a bit disappointed if you end up in one of them, wouldn't you? You know, you want to be in something like that. So this is a T-62, a Russian tank, but this one was actually captured from the Iraqis during the Iraq War, 1991. This is as good as the technology was back then. That's infrared, so that people could fight in the dark. They could see in the dark. But the problem with that was the enemy could pick up on that infrared. Nowadays they use thermal imaging, which the enemy can't pick up. Yeah, we took that off the Iraqis. This one here is a Challenger 2, British, and we still use that today. One of the best we've made. What else have we got? You know, there's just too many tanks. Too many tanks to show you. Here we've got an Alvis Scorpion. I didn't need to look at the sign, I already knew that. Alvis Scorpion. Don't know anything about it. Don't really want to read about it because it's really small and a bit dull. So we'll leave that one out. That's a German Leopard. The Germans started naming all their tanks after cats, after big cats in 1942. And that one's the Leopard, quite a modern one. It looks like we might be in for quite a long video, guys, because I've only done that bit. I've still got all this to do yet.
Now over there with the other recruits and get kitted out.
Don't know who he's talking to. I've only come to look around the museum, I'm not signing up. Rather him than me. This place is really well done out. They're trying to recreate the scene in France. Hey up, Command HQ, I better go check in here.
sure, but the ground is terrible out there.
There. It can't be that bad. Come on. I'm guessing I'm in World War I here. So I'm in a trench. How do you go from being in a museum to in a trench on the front line? I haven't even got a gun. He cannot be comfortable. So I'm just walking along, minding my own business, and look what happens. Look what happened to me. I don't want to go that way.
Mensch, der Teufel ist ausgebrochen! Gottes Wille, was ist denn das? Es kommt, es ist ausgebrochen! Gottes Wille, was ist denn das?
Shouting at me in French, in German, I don't know what he's talking about. This is the Mark IV, the most prolific tank used in World War I, from 1917, and there were 1,200 of them in World War I. Pretty impressive for 100 years ago. And here I am, actually inside a Mark IX tank. It's a bit smelly. Look at the size of it. Huge. That's a Mark V. Nothing interesting to tell you about that one really. And this one's the Mark VIII. It's tiny. It's tiny. No, this is the real Mark VIII. I don't know, I've shown you a Mark V, a Mark VI, a Mark II, a Mark I, a Mark IX. A lot of them are called Mark, I've noticed. Funny name for a tank, really, isn't it? Mark. Why not Richard or John? I don't know which tank this is, but I'm inside it. Oh. Get claustrophobic in one of them. You know, you think it'd be like pretty empty inside. There's no room to move at all, apart from in your seat. This picture's from the Victory Parade over Westminster Bridge in London at the end of World War I.
They'll tell you more about themselves. Bye now.
Remember kids, don't do drugs. Just come to Bovington Tank Museum and talk to a talking horse.
Pulling timber to build, or taking a family. And it was time for games too. We played polo and went riding in the
They're all over the place.
wonderful times.
Come on then. Come on then. Move along now. Move along now. Keep your heads down.
Come on then.
Keep your heads
Get
down.
in.
Keep moving.
I'm moving.
Find that wire.
I'm moving.
Find that wire.
I'm minding the
Come on,
wire.
then. Come
Nowhere
on,
near the
then.
wire. Come
Move
on
along
then.
now. Move along now.
I'm
Keep your
moving.
heads down.
I'm keeping my head down.
Keep your heads down. Keep moving.
Getting on my nipples in. Well, I thought I'd just about finished until I just walked in here and found about 1,000 more tanks. To start with, I was just going to laugh at this one, but it's actually very, very clever, simply because of its size. It's tiny. Well, that's a proper tank. It's actually called a Goliath. I'm sure that's just an ironic name for it, but it's a remote control bomb. They would drive this into the enemy and then press a button and it would blow up. That one's an A10. Can't be bothered telling you anything about that. It's boring. But this one is an M26 American. Now, in World War II, what the Americans said is, let's just make thousands of Shermans, quantity over quality, yeah? But by the end of the war, the Shermans were completely outclassed by the German Panzers. But this was the next one developed towards the end of the war, the M26. There's that many things in here that just stop putting signs on things. there's like a million. There must be over a million. I think I need to get my tent out of the car because I'm going to be here a long time. Got some beasts now. This is a Tiger 2. And they coated them with something called Zimmerman. I was just reading, and it's like a clay, and it sets on there, and it stops mines from being stuck onto the tanks, and stops the glare as well from the sun. But it says at the end of 1944 this was the best tank in the war. There you have a Panzer IV, and a Jags Tiger. This had the biggest gun. The biggest gun in World War II. That's an M10 American tank with an English gun. We have the best guns. This one behind me is the Tortoise. Now, I don't think you're going to be able to tell just how wide this thing is. Look, my arm, it's about twice the width of me with my arms stretched. It is absolutely huge in width. Not so much in length, still big. Cruiser tank Mark II. A Matilda. Thornycroft Bison. You know, just tell me when you're getting bored. A38 Valiant. You've got to love the American humour, haven't you? This is called a duck. This is called a crab. We've got a turret here, which is from not far away from here. You can really see how thick this is. Look how thick that is. And when you look down the barrel, they've actually cut the end of the barrel off for convenience where it was. But look how thick that is. That's about 2 inches. There's just too many, guys. Far too many for me to go around every single one and read up about every single one of them. You could literally spend a weekend here. It is absolutely amazing. Anyone who's never been, Bovington Tank Museum, get yourself here. It is fantastic. £13 to get in for adults, but worth every penny, believe me. I don't believe it. I've just walked through another door and there's another 1,000 tanks. I'm in absolute awe. I've never seen anything like this in my life. You've got a £2 bomb there which had an accident. It didn't, it got jammed in the barrel of the tank, and look at the end of that. This section was actually opened by the Queen. The Queen herself in 1997 to celebrate her 50th wedding anniversary. And it's a tank cut in half. Absolutely fascinating.
Tango 2-1, Roger, out.
Unbelievable.
Right stick, up. Creep forward slowly.
And it's a Centurion Mark III, by the way. This place never stops amazing me. This tank is the actual tank used in the film Fury. Fury. The directors of Fury came to this museum and says, have you got any tanks we could use for a film? And they gave them this tank and they kitted it all up as you see here. 2 years ago, before it was released, they had a press conference here when Brad Pitt was here. And you've even got the uniform from one of the soldiers here. Grady Travis. Absolutely incredible. Some of the fake puppets, costume or art, makeup, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, the actual Fury. This one's a TOG 2. Now something you might not know, but the tracks, I'm not saying on this tank, I don't know if it is on this one or not, but on some tanks, they're actually, I'll just show you inside, they're actually operated separately, and the operator would have one set for the left one and one set for the right one, so in theory it was actually driving two, it was like driving two cars, I should imagine. The FV432. Where? Nothing there. This is a Challenger 1, British tank. Our main tank in the Gulf War. Obviously the best tank in the world. What it did is kill all the bad people and just left all the good people to live, and it won the war for us. It's won every single war since it was invented because it's British and it's cool. I don't know if you can see this, but this tank barrel is aiming directly at Brad Pitt. That's not a bad thing really, is it? I don't think I'd like to be sat underneath this netting all day. Look at it, it's like a psychedelic room. That'd do your head in. So this is Lance Corporal Craig Murfitt, and this was his helmet in Afghanistan, and he's got a bullet hole, look. He lived to tell the tale, but basically he saw an Afghan man with a gun and a child, using a child as a human shield in front of him. So Craig wouldn't fire at the man because he didn't want to hurt this child, so he waited a few seconds. He shouldn't have waited because the guy then shot at him, shot him right in the head, but it just knocked him to the ground. He said it felt like being hit on the side of the head with a hammer. So them helmets sure do their job. By the way, the baddie, the Afghan guy, they did eventually catch up with him and killed him. That's what you get, you see. I think they call it karma. Now that's what I should look like. You know, a metal detector in one hand and a gun in the other. That should have been me. What seems to be the problem? Is there anything I can help you with? I'm pretty good with cars. That's a girl. That's a girl. Look. We've got a girl fixing the cars. Oh! And I'm pretty sure that's a girl as well. What's going on? What's with all girls in Afghanistan? You know, you should be at home cooking and looking after kids and cleaning house, not fighting as wars for us. This is a Russian T-55. They made 37,500 of these. But this is quite odd, you know, please stay behind the barrier at all times. It's 5 foot tall, you know, I couldn't get over if I wanted to. And why would you want to? This one's a proper girl tank, and I'll tell you why, because it's known as the Tupperware Tank, or plastic tank. It was just an idea they had. They was trying to make basically some armour which isn't made out of plastic, which isn't made out of aluminium, because when aluminium's pierced inside the tanks it shatters bits around and can still kill people inside. So they were trying different metals. Tupperware tank, there you go. And basically, don't think I haven't noticed that every second word coming out of my mouth lately is basically. I'm sick of saying the word, I can't stop saying basically. What's wrong with me? I never used to say basically as a kid. You know, it's one of them words I'd probably use once a week, if that. And now it's every second word. Basically this, basically that. Shut up, Dan. Basically. Bang 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 bang. Bang 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 bang. So I hope you enjoyed that little tour. I absolutely adored it. That is my favourite museum so far, I think. It's absolutely amazing. Thanks for joining. See you next time on Digging the Course 365. You take care. Tomorrow we're digging on Weymouth Beach.